probably the highest profile oil and gas M&A deal this decade, Royal Dutch Shell has agreed to buy exploration company BG Group in a transaction worth over £47 billion. Joining me down the line is Dr. Christian Stadler of Warwick Business School. Christian, BG Group warned earlier this year that it would write down the value of its oil and gas assets by nearly £6 billion due to the oil price slump, and Shell also announced that it would be cutting spending by nearly £10 billion over the next 3 years. Could this merger be a measure of desperation?
Possibly for British Gas. I don't think for Shell. For Shell, it's an important merger. Primarily, they are still looking to the future to replace their reserves.
So this deal, what will it mean for the global oil and gas industry?
It combines two relatively large companies to build a player which is now the largest in LNG, and we'll need to see whether overall will be larger than Exxon Mobil or not after that. Yeah, I don't think it has many implications beyond that. Possibly it will start a merger wave.
You said that Shell missed out on the late 1990s mega merger wave due to their complex shareholding structure. The company was the product of an unconsumed merger with 60% being Dutch and 40% British. Why is this not an issue for Shell now?
This goes back historically to 1907, where you had two separate companies. One was Shell Transport and Trading, the other one was Royal Dutch. And the two companies came together in the merger, but they kept separate structures internally, where you would imagine there would be a decision made by the people which compose the top management, but they then have to go into separate boards, one for Royal Dutch, one for Shell Transport and Trading, in order to formally get decisions for this company. Because legally speaking, we had two separate companies, Royal Dutch and Shell Transport and Trading, until that was changed recently. And that makes it very complex. And as a result of that, it made it much more difficult, not impossible, but much more difficult for them to participate in this last merger wave.
So why does this make sense for Shell now? And is BG Group the best fit?
Like many oil companies, they are struggling to replace their reserves. Last year, to my knowledge, they had 26% replacement issue. That means that you produce oil, you want to find new oil and gas in order to have the same amount for future production. And that's hard to do. Yeah? Oil and gas is in either very difficult, tricky countries to deal with, or it is in areas where the technological challenges are very hard to deal with. Yeah. So how can you replace your oil and gas reserves if you're not finding enough oil yourself? Is by buying that. And the fastest way to do so for a company like Shell is to buy another big company like British Gas.
What will OPEC make of this deal?
They don't care whether companies or so merge. It's not as if British Gas and Shell would be in a position to now tell OPEC, well, we want to pay a different oil price. Yeah? Even if we now think of them as a large oil company, considering the total amount of oil and gas that is being produced, they are tiny still.
So do you think this is the start of a lot more M&A activity in the oil and gas sector?
I would not be surprised. We saw something similar in a climate in the end of the 1990s where the oil price had dropped dramatically, admittedly much more. We had oil prices of below $10 a barrel in 1999. So it's not quite as dramatic, but nonetheless, yeah, companies just a year ago got used to $100 plus per barrel, and now we're talking between $50 and $60 a barrel. So they are under pressure, and many companies are not able to produce, at least in some of their assets, in line with what they can achieve when they sell their product. And one way out is a merger for a corporation and try to potentially look at cost savings. So I would certainly not be surprised if we see more mergers in the next few months.
So finally, should we expect a lot fewer organisations in the energy sector? And if so, do we risk oligopolistic or even monopolistic conditions?
I would not be concerned about this, because even if we have large oil companies, they're still small. When you look overall, the very largest ones are actually national oil companies. So Exxon Mobil, which is usually the largest oil company that we think of, is much, much smaller. I think it's about a tenth of the size of Saudi Aramco, which is the national oil company of Saudi Arabia. And a few mega mergers is not going to change that picture overall.